All right, so today we're going to talk about writing linear equations, and I'll either be giving you a point and a slope or 2 points, and you are going to be told what form I want it in. I'm either going to want it in point slope form, slope intercept form, or standard form. So let's review those forms really quickly. So point slope form, remember, is y minus y1 equals m, which is the slope, and then x minus x1. Slope intercept is y equals mx plus b. It's the most common form, y equals mx plus b. It can also be written as y equals b plus mx. You don't have to put the slope term first. Then we've got standard form. So standard form is a x plus b y equals c. Now, if you did not watch the standard form video or you have no idea what standard form is, you do want to go back and watch the standard form video. Otherwise, you're going to be a bit confused. Okay, so a couple things to think about. Whenever you're writing an equation, I like to start off by just kind of visualizing what my line is going to look like, right? So the first question says, a line goes through the point 12, negative 7, and has a slope of 1/4. Find its equation. So let's just say, I'm just going to sketch, right? So like I don't have a scale here. So I can kind of just think. So 12, negative 7, let's say this graph, let's say this is 12. And that would mean if this is negative 12, that 12, negative 7 would be somewhere, right about there, wouldn't it? So I'm going to put my first dot there. So 12, negative 7, let's say that's there. And then let's think through the slope. So remember, the slope of this is going to be pretty shallow, right? Because it's a number less than 1. So 1/4 would mean I rise 1, run 4. Or I go down 1 to the left 4. Because remember, a negative over a negative is a positive. So if you just kind of think about what that's going to look like, you're going to end up having this like nice shallow line right here, okay? So now if you think about that, just think about your y-intercept here. So if you look, the y-intercept looks like it's going to hit way down here, right? So clearly it's going to be negative. And if I'm saying this is negative 12, it's probably going to be a number pretty close to negative 12. It might even be even less, like it could be down here, depending on how well I actually did my sketch. But it's just like, does this make sense when we're done? So now let's go ahead. We have enough information now to write it in point slope form, because remember, point slope form, we need a point and a slope. And we have a point and we have the slope. So we just need to put the point in and the slope in, and then I'm done. I have the equation, right? So I'm going to say y minus the y value. Well, the y value is negative 7. So y minus negative 7 is y plus 7 equals the slope. The slope is 1/4. And then in parentheses, I'm going to have x minus the x value. Well, the x value is 12, right? Remember, your order pairs go x and then y. So there's my point slope form. I'm done, right? That is my point slope form. Now, if you have your point slope form, you can convert your point slope form to slope intercept form and standard form by just moving numbers around. So let's take what we have here and convert that to slope intercept form. All we have to do is solve for y. So in order to solve for y, I'm going to distribute the 1/4 to the x minus 12, which is going to give me y plus 7 equals 1/4 times x is 1/4 x, and then 1/4 times negative 12 is negative 3, because 1/4 of 12 is 3. And then I'm going to subtract 7 from both sides, because what I'm trying to do is get y alone. And then I'm left with y equals 1/4 x minus 10. And now this is when looking at my sketch is pretty helpful, right? What I got here is the slope is 1/4. Well, yeah, we already know that. It's here. And also our graph, pretty shallow. And then my y-intercept is negative 10. Well, think about the y-axis right down here. This is definitely going to be negative, and it looks pretty darn close to negative 10. Okay? Now, standard form. Standard form, all I have to do now is I can just take this guy and start moving everything around. So you have to remember a couple things about standard form. X and y have to be on the same side. X comes first, then the y, and then it has to be equal to a constant. You also have to remember that we don't want a to be negative, and there can't be any fractions or decimals in my final answer. And the GCF of a, b, and c have to be 1. So there's lots of stipulations with standard form. So Let's just first start by getting x and y on one side of the equal sign. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract 1/4 x from both sides. So I'll just use my space here to do that. So I'm going to subtract 1/4 x from both sides, and then I'm going to put my rest of the work up here. So I'm going to have now, instead of writing y minus 1/4 x, I'm going to put the negative 1/4 x first, because in standard form, I want the x to come first. So I have the term negative 1/4 x, and then I'm adding that to y because y is positive, and that's going to equal negative 10. So now I have x and y on the same side. The first term, the x term, has to be positive, and we can't have any fractions. So we're going to clear the fraction and clear the negative in the same step by multiplying everything by negative 4. So now I'm just going to multiply everything. I've kind of run out of room here, but I'm going to multiply everything by negative 4. I chose negative 4 because the denominator I'm trying to get rid of is 4, right? I chose negative because I'm also trying to clear the negative sign on the x. So now you just multiply all of your terms. So negative 4 times negative 1/4 x is just 1x, so that's just x. And then negative 4 times y is negative 4y. And then negative 4 times negative 10 is 40. And there you have it. There's your standard form. Now, standard form doesn't really tell us a whole lot, but I do like to think through my x and y intercepts, right? So it's really pretty easy to figure out your x and y intercepts here. So if you think about your x-intercept is the value of x when y is 0. So just imagine if I put 0 right in here for y, this whole term is going to go away. I'm going to get x equals 40. So that means that the x-intercept is 40. So think about this. Let's go back to the graph and look at it. If you think about if this was 12, 40 is going to be way the heck over here, right? So if you think about this line continuing on, continuing on, continuing on, it's going to hit an x-intercept of something way larger than 12. So that makes sense, right? And then we already know that the y-intercept is negative 10 because we have it here, but let's just calculate it, right? Remember the value, your y-intercept is the value of y when x is equal to 0, right? Because this is the ordered pair 0, negative 10. So if I put 0 here, cover that x up, solve the equation negative 4y equals 40. Well, to get y alone, I would divide both sides by negative 4, and I would get y is equal to negative 10, which we already know makes sense right here. So just some helpful things to make sure that as you're doing this, your answers are making sense. Okay, let's try one more. So the next one says a line goes through the points negative 4, negative 5, and 3, 9. What's its equation? So before we start, let's just kind of get an estimate of where negative 4, negative 5 is, right? So let's say this is 0, 0. I'm just going to say my scale, let's say each of the ends is just 10. That just makes sense to me in my head. So then negative 4, negative 5 is going to be here, about here, right? So let's put a point there. So it's going to be halfway down the line and not quite halfway to the left. And then we want to do the point 3, 9. So 3, 9 is going to be kind of over 3 and then up 9. So it's going to be way the heck up here. So I'm going to put that guy up here, and then I'm going to create my line. So now if you think about this, it looks like my slope is going to be pretty steep. So my slope's probably not going to be a fraction. And then my y-intercept, it looks like it's really close to 0. And if I did a good sketch, it's probably a number a little above 0. It's probably positive. So in order to get my equation in point slope form, well, the first thing I do have to do is I have to find the slope. So reminder, if you're given two ordered pairs, you can just calculate the slope by subtracting the y values and subtracting the x values. So let's go ahead and do that in this box. Let me slide this over a little bit. All right, so in order to get my slope, I'm just going to say m equals, and on the top, remember you're subtracting your y values. So your y values are negative 5 and 9. I like to do my positive minus my negative because that ends up turning to addition. So you can do 9 minus negative 5, or you can do negative 5 minus 9. So I'm going to do 9 minus negative 5, which is actually plus 5. And then you got to do the same order on the bottom. So 3 minus negative 4 is 3 plus 4, right? So on the top, I'm going to get 9 plus 5, which is 14. and 3 plus 4, which is 7. So 14 over 7 is 2. So there you go. You now have that your slope is 2. So now I can go over here and I can write it in point slope form. You have two options. You have y minus, let's say I'm using the first ordered pair, so that would be y minus the y value, which is -5, so it would be y plus 5, equals, the slope we just found is 2, and then x minus the x value, which would be -4, so x minus -4 is the same as x plus 4. And you're basically done. You could, if you wanted to, come up with the other one. It could have been y minus 9 is equal to 2, and then x minus 3. Now, when you go to convert to slope-intercept form, it does not matter if you use the first point slope form equation or the second one. And when you give me a point slope form equation, remember you only have to give me one of them. It doesn't matter. So I'm going to go ahead and just do the bottom one because it's easier for me to see. If you want to do the top one on your own and see if you get the same answer as me, that's really cool too. All right, so then you're going to distribute the 2. And when I do that, I'm going to get y minus 9 equals 2x minus 6. And then I'm going to add 9 to both sides. And when I add 9 to both sides, I'm going to get y equals 2x plus 3. And so if you think about that, I probably could have done a little bit more accurate on my graph over here, but I did say that the y-intercept would be something a little bit above 0. And so plus 3, right? And we already know the slope is 2. And it makes sense because I did say this is going to be a pretty steep line. All right? So now standard form. Standard form, we got to get x and y to one side of the equal sign. So the first thing to do would be to subtract the 2x from both sides. And then put the x value first. So I'm going to have -2x plus y is equal to 3. So now x and y are on the same side. We don't have any fractions, so that's great. But I don't want to have my first term be negative, so I'm going to multiply everything by -1. And when I do that, that just changes all the signs. So I'm going to get 2x minus y equals -3. And there you go. And then if you think through whether or not that makes sense, think about your x-intercepts, right? So the x-intercept would be the value of x when y is 0, so that cancels out the y value. So think about solving for x. You would divide both sides by 2, and so you would get that your x-intercept is -3 over 2, which is -1.5. So go over here, look, the x-intercept hits the x-axis right here. Definitely it's something negative, right? And then if you're trying to find the y value, well, we already know the y-intercept is 3, but let's just see if this equation gives me the same thing. The 2x would cancel out because we put 0 in for x, solve for y. So you get -y equals -3. And if -y equals -3, if you divide or multiply everything by -1, you would get that y is equal to +3. So there you go. Basically, when you're doing these, if you can start something in point slope form, then all you have to do is convert things from your point slope form to either your slope intercept form or your standard form. All right, so now let's take a look at horizontal and vertical lines. So if I ask you to write an equation of a horizontal line that goes through 3, -6, many of you probably already have a clue how to do this, but 3, -6, let's do a sketch. So I'm going to go to the right 3 down 6. So let's say 3, -6 right here, and it's a horizontal line, right? So think about the horizontal line. A horizontal line, which axis does it hit? It does not hit the x-axis, right? It hits the y-axis right here. So what is that y value? Well, that y value is -6. So the equation of this line is just y equals -6. So if you have a horizontal line, you're not going to write it in, there's only one form to a horizontal line. It's just y equals whatever the y value is of that ordered pair. So quick reminder, if you were just given, like, write an equation of a line that goes through and you're given 2 points and it doesn't tell you what form they want it in, calculate the slope first, see what the slope is, and you might find that your slope, if you have a horizontal line, your slope is 0. So the hint that you're going to have a horizontal line is that the slope is 0. So keep that in mind, right? If your slope is 0, that means you're going to have a horizontal line. All right, you also would know that all of the y values along a horizontal line are all going to be the same. So if you've been given 2 ordered pairs with the same y values, then you know that you're going to have a slope of 0. So now number 4, write an equation of vertical line that goes through 2, 5. Well, 2, 5, let's just sketch it. I would go to the right 2 and up 5. So let's say that's about here. And now it's a vertical line, right? So the vertical line has an undefined slope. So I'm going to write over here. We have a hint. If you calculate your slope and you get an undefined slope, then you know, I'm spelling that wrong, find slope, then you know you have a vertical line, right? So remember, vertical lines are always x equals equations, and a clue is that this guy hits the x-axis, and where does it hit the x-axis? Well, it hits the x-axis at 2. So the equation of this vertical line would just be x equals 2. So horizontal and vertical lines can't be written in any other form. All right, let's try the next 2. Now, the equations that you're going to be given for problems would be like questions 5 and 6. So it says a line goes through the point -1, 6 and 8, 0. Write its equation in slope-intercept form. So remember, slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b, right? Now, we don't have the slope in this problem. We also don't have the y-intercept. So slope-intercept form would mean that I need the slope and the y-intercept. I don't have either one of those things. So I can calculate the slope when I'm given 2 points. I can get the y-intercept by starting with a form that's really easy, which is point-slope form, right? So I can start this in point-slope form. Most equations you're going to start in point-slope form, and then you're going to convert them. So the first thing I want to do, I have 2 points, so I got some points, and I need a slope. So let's first calculate the slope. So remember, the slope, you just subtract the y minus the y on the top and the x minus the x on the bottom. So I'm going to do 6 minus 0 on the top, and then on the bottom, I'm going to do -1 minus 8. And that's going to give me 6 over -9, which then reduces to -2/3. So my slope is -2/3. So now that I know my slope, I'm going to take one of my points. It doesn't matter what point you choose. You can choose -1, 6 or 8, 0. I personally like the ordered pair 8, 0 because I think 0 is an easy number to work with. So I'm going to take 8, 0. I'm going to plug that into point-slope form. So I'm going to do y minus the y value of 0 equals your slope, which is -2/3, times x minus 8. So now, if you think about this, if I do y minus 0, well, y minus 0 is just y, right? So that's just y. Or if I add 0 to both sides, that 0 is going to go away. Distribute the -2/3, and you're going to get -2/3 x, and then multiply -2/3 times -8. So quick reminder, that's like -8 over 1. We can't do any cross canceling because 3 doesn't go into 8, so just multiply your two top numbers together. So -2 times -8 is 16, and 3 times 1 is 3, so we get 16 over 3. And that's the form that I want, slope-intercept form. However, if I did want to sketch this to make sure it makes sense, or if I just wanted to graph it using Desmos to see if it actually hits these points, it's helpful to have 16 over 3 as a mixed number because that's your y-intercept. So I would say writing y equals -2/3 x plus 16 over 3. Well, 3 goes into 16 5 times, so it's going to be 5 and 1/3. And there's your y-intercept. So I don't care. You can leave it as a mixed number, or you can leave it as an improper fraction. Either way is fine. So let's go ahead and take a look at number 6. It says, write an equation in standard form of a line that goes through 4, -8, and 0, 6. And this says, what form should you start with? So you're never going to start in standard form. You're usually going to start in point-slope form. But this one, I don't know if you noticed, you have the ordered pair 0, -6. That is your y-intercept. So the cool thing about this is that you can start in slope-intercept form because you can calculate your slope and you've been given the y-intercept. Now, if you didn't notice that, that's fine. You can start in point slope form and then convert it to slope intercept form because you'll get 6 for your y-intercept anyway. But I like to let you know that sometimes there are shortcuts, right? So I want to get to standard form. Let's start this problem in slope intercept form. So we got to find the slope first, right? A lot of times you just have to start by finding the slope. So when I find the slope, let's do my y values on the top. So I'm going to do -8 minus 6. And on the bottom, 4 minus 0. Of course, you could flip it and do -6 minus 8 and 0 minus 4. You'll get the same answer. So -8 minus 6 is -14. And then 4 minus 0 is 4. If I simplify -14 over 4, that gives me -7 over 2. So my slope is going to be -7 over 2. And we already know that my y-intercept is 0, 6. So that just means the b value is 6, right? So I can start by just writing this equation in slope-intercept form. So y equals -7/2 x plus 6, right? Now, I don't want my final answer to be in slope-intercept form. I want my final answer to be in standard form. So convert it. Convert everything. So bring the x to the other side. So I'm going to add 7 over 2x to both sides. When you rewrite it, make sure that you put the x term first. So it's going to be 7 over 2x plus y equals 6. Now, I can't have fractions in my final answer, so now I have to clear the fraction. And we're going to clear the fraction by multiplying by the denominator. So multiply everything by 2, and then you get 7x plus 2y equals 12. Now, you could check this several ways. One way, since I didn't do a sketch of this information, checking with x and y intercepts is maybe not the best option, but you also remember this is the equation that makes both of these ordered pairs true. So another thing you can do is take those ordered pairs, plug them in, and see if they work. So real quick, plugging in 0, 6 is really easy, right? If you put 0 in for x, that goes away. You put 6 in for y, 2 times 6 is 12, so that's going to work. 4 -8 will also work, right? 7 times 4 is 28, and then 2 times -8 is 16, -16. So then you would have 28 plus -16, and 28 plus -16 is 12. So that's another way to check it. So the rest of the problems are meant for you to give it a try on your own. There is another video that walks you through the next set of problems if you need it. So my advice is to try them on your own, see if you can get them, and then tune into the video to make sure that you're doing it correctly. If you're still feeling very lost, then maybe just tune into the video now, but then you do want to try some problems on your own as well. So video number 2 will take you through how to do the next set of the problems if you feel like you need that. Good luck.